Good God, I cannot believe football is finally back, and it could not have come at a better time. 2024 kickoff actually happened last night, and I watched back for my own sake for probably like the fourth or fifth time since doing it. My Bills 2023 prediction thoughts ramble video that I made actually in May of 2023, which it's just interesting right now for me to look back on that. Obviously for the takes and stuff, and I predicted 11-6. I predicted a division win, and I predicted them to lose to a potential big dog, and that's exactly what happened. I predict as obviously, there was some turbulence there during the regular season, and you may have gotten to the destination, but the journey was, you couldn't have reasonably predicted that, I don't think. I was pretty dead on with my prediction. Unfortunately, in the case of another Chiefs beating, not a beatdown per se, but still another annoying at this point, Chiefs loss at the hands of the Bills. Or Bills loss at the hands of the Chiefs in the playoffs. If Tyler Bass makes that kick, I still think they're going to lose anyway. So, fuck it. They should have just gone for the touchdown. But, the NFL is so crazy. It's such a game. There are such minuscule moments in games that can completely change the entire outcome. It's such a game of inches. It's such a game of milliseconds. It is unreal. Because if the Bills ended up having to try and kick that field goal that they missed, but had Josh Allen 2 plays before that had literally a half a second more of time to have a clean pocket before having somebody get driven into him. Everybody talks about, oh my gosh, he was wide open in the middle of the field. Why the hell did he throw it? Whatever. But if he doesn't get hit, he's able to hit, I don't think it was Shakir, but it was a receiver, I can't remember who, wide open and for a touchdown, and he got hit as he was throwing, and the ball went errant, and people didn't even really think about because sometimes whenever a pass is incomplete or something, sometimes you can kind of see in the replay or just in the view of the ball how open somebody was, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he missed that throw, or a play that they almost had. There was a lot of that last night between the Ravens and the Chiefs. That game went more or less kind of how I was going to predict and expected it to. Chiefs are going to be scary this year. Anyway, they're always scary. If Josh Allen gets just half a second more in that pocket, then they would have scored a touchdown, and probably Mahomes would have went down the field. But the seat that they would have been up 31-27, assuming Bass makes the kick. So the Chiefs would have had to score a touchdown as opposed to just getting a field goal, which is what they've done in the past in games that they have won or just gone down to the wire. Anyway, Bills 2023 season, I would say it was a success, but depends, how granular you go, because the same shit that's happened the last 3 years pretty much. Bills look great in the regular season, or at least, they perform well. 11 wins is, I would say that's quality. It's the benchmark, I would say, for a good team, because 10 9-win teams, some of them are good, see the Packers, but some of them, Steelers, no good. They continue their streak of being a very good team, and they are going to go over a lot of change this season. There's a lot of new faces, a lot of veterans that were, if not great on the field, they were great in the locker room. They were great from a mentorship standpoint. The Bills did keep both their coordinators, so that's good. We retained Joe Brady, who I think did a good job of, I don't want to say maturing Josh Allen at the end of last year, but definitely reining him in a little bit and letting him kind of take what's in front of him in the form of not just short passes and not taking as many shots and maybe not having as gaudy of passing statistics, but also just like, bro, you can run the ball, 40 times a game and beat up on a good Dallas Cowboys team, admittedly, 31-10, and yeah, you only threw for 100-some yards and a touchdown, like 15 or 16 total passes, but dude, like, no one's going to give a fuck. It's not going to matter. You got the win. That's all that matters, because if you're trying to play into a pass-happy game, especially with the Cowboys of last year, that's playing right into the hands of the Dallas Cowboys, who can go up and down the field with Dak passing the ball all day long. But this season, this offseason, there's a lot of change, man. Saw a couple people retire, Micah Hyde is one that comes to mind pretty quickly, and that's unfortunate. But, he had some neck problems, and, bro, don't fuck with that. If you got to go, you got to go, for tooting, for pooping, and for retiring before the NFL just the dangers of playing the game and just the trials and tribulations that the human body goes through playing as a professional, a safety who tackles players. Like, this objective is to get his body on another person's body to stop their forward momentum. That takes years off your life, dog. So, Micah, you probably will, I would think, especially because he came in 2017 when they first started making the playoffs. I feel like he kind of ushered in that culture that Sean McDermott has built. Maybe it's debatably a little stagnant. I don't know about that. For sure. Have my thoughts. But yeah, I feel like he's a Bills Hall of Famer. Not NFL Hall of Famer, because I just don't think he was notable enough. But definitely a Bills Hall of Famer who last year was pretty solid. He wasn't on the field a ton, but was pretty solid, this past year. And there's definitely shoes to fill. And not only is Micah Hyde gone, but you also have Trey White, who was cut. He's coming off of an injury. He is a little up there in age, but I mean, Trey White is a fan favorite. Again, another player that came over in 2017 and really ushered in that culture. And he's on the Rams now, so wishing him the best. I think he's a very fun player, a very scrappy player who, yeah, he may not be what he once was, but I'm sure he's going to make some plays for the Rams. And I'll miss him for sure. But he had a pretty big contract, and he was coming off an injury, so I understand it. And then, of course, we lost Jordan Poyer as well, who he didn't retire. He actually went to Miami. And shout out to Jordan Poyer. He gave Josh Allen his flowers in the NFL Top 100 players, despite being on the Dolphins. He said that the best quarterback in the NFL is Josh Allen, and I think it's arguable, so I'm not going to, be all over that take, but open up your mind. There's totally an argument to be made there. But Poyer, again, Poyer and Hyde, and Trey White, obviously those guys have just been staples, and it's going to feel weird watching Bills games. I know Trey White, really all of them had their fair share of injuries from time to time. But man, I am gonna miss them a little bit. And there may be, some games where Tua, and maybe some other players that we don't traditionally let have strong statistical games. Tua may throw for 300 yards next time we play. Because Tua does that to a lot of teams with subpar defenses. We just have a great defense, so every time we play the Dolphins, he doesn't look very good. Every time we play Lamar Jackson, he doesn't look very good. And I think a lot of that is because of our back end, which, no matter how you slice it, Cole Bishop, and I'll talk about him in a bit, and Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards, another addition in the offseason. Like, they can try and mask it, but man, dude, there's one thing you can't teach, and that's just instincts. That's just experience. And so we'll see, because we also did lose Saron Neal, another guy in the back end who had been around for a while. He was a really fun, gritty special teamer. And I feel like just randomly I would see him on the field, and he would just be around the ball all the time, even on, secondary snaps where he was, playing defense. He unfortunately was cut. And so, I mean, you lost a fair amount of defense offensively. Big trade, got Stephon Diggs, who, overall, he wasn't that productive. I'll give it to you. He really was. I mean, he had 1,200 yards. He had, I think over 100 catches, which that's a lot. I mean, over 100 yards or over 100 catches with his target count. And, I mean, he had 8 touchdowns, but he'd not really been a huge touchdown guy anyway. He really made not as much noise down the stretch, down the end of the season. And obviously he had that horrid drop pass that I know he wants back, as well as the rest of Bills Mafia in that divisional round game last year against the Chiefs. I mean, he was still occupying space. He was still being that number one figure, at least, or that top 5 figure that he was, like, going into last season, like, undoubtedly. He was still commanding attention. He was still changing the defensive approach and the philosophy of the opponent, which is something that the Bills aren't going to have this year. They did also let go of Gabe Davis. To me, Gabe Davis was probably one of the most frustrating players that I've watched on the Bills. I really can't think of someone quite like him that has the potential, the skills, and I honestly have trust in him to be the best player on the field or among the best players on the field, and to be an active participant in the NFL games, like, and go for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns against the Chiefs. Like, obviously you don't expect that as a number 2 receiver, but he could. But at the same time, I mean, what did he have, 5 games last year where he didn't register a catch? He didn't get anything on the stat sheet. Like, oh my God. We'll see what happens with him in Jacksonville with the rookie Thomas and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, and just having Lawrence, and like that offense will be interesting to see how they divvy up the touches and the targets for the pass catchers. But obviously I'll miss those two. Because there's been a lot of good times, of this Bills offense that they have been part of, and or been the direct reason why that these offensive times, it sounds funny to say that in this context, but the games where the Bills have dropped 56 on the Dolphins, or had a perfect game against the Patriots in the playoffs, or just in general, like, you just don't worry about your team having to, like, oh God, are we going to score more than 20 points? Are we going to kick 3 field goals and score 1, maybe 2 touchdowns? And is that going to be enough? No. Bills don't have to worry about that. And again, I think a lot of it is because of, definitely Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, and, to a lesser extent, last year maybe Latavius Murray and Deontay Hardy. Oh, shout out to him. He won the game against the Dolphins hands down. And also Nyheim Hines is also going to be he's playing for a different team this year, so that was another off-season loss. Obviously it sucks, and those players absolutely contributed. No sour apples here to the offense the Bills had, the player Josh Allen is, and so on and so forth. But obviously you say goodbye to players, but you also say hello to new players, And I think Josh is definitely, at this point in his career, to the point where he's not carried by a number 1 receiver, all right? We can see that plain as fucking day. And honestly, I don't buy into the narrative as much as far as Stephon Diggs really not being a great receiver anymore, given his production dipping significantly at the end of last season. I think that clearly had something to do more with the coach and philosophy change of his offense as opposed to him as a player. But obviously you point to, oh God, that divisional round drop against the Chiefs sucks. It sucks, and it irks my soul, and it makes me sad, and, been a lot of sad times for me, and I don't need the Bills to cause me sadness, because I think about how fucking not horrible, but just how mediocre, and just how, you get your hopes up. Oh, we can maybe make the wild card. Oh, we can maybe make the wild card. Tyrod, he only threw six interceptions all season. But you're a football fan who's hoping, man, 3 field goals and maybe a touchdown or 2. Is that going to be enough? Oh God, so glad to not be dealing with that. But the Bills, again, for all of their losses, a lot of big ones, man, especially Mitch Morse, that's an underrated one. The Bills, obviously, they still have Josh Allen, and they brought in a fair amount of players to supplement who they lost. I would say more in volume and depth as opposed to, their biggest signing in the offseason. Ooh, I don't even know. I mean, you could say is it Mike Edwards? Is it a rookie that they drafted in the second round? They didn't even have a first-round pick. But I like the Bills' depth as is anyway. I think the Bills are a very good team. And that's just not even with me being biased as a fan and also just having that, bump you get from having an elite quarterback like Josh Allen. They are legitimately a good team. Look at the statistics. Their defense is always, very good to even great, and their offense speaks for itself, But they did bring in quite a few pass catchers, which is what I'm really looking forward to. Mac Hollins, big-ass motherfucker. They brought a lot of big boys, too, which is going to be exciting. But Mac Hollins, obviously, he's goated as hell for his social media presence. But, he's kind of, I think, a player who could have a nice Andre Holmes, throwback to some old Bills players, some nice fill-in spots, and if nothing else, is nice depth. Curtis Samuel got signed to a multi-year deal, so he's likely to be a starter, which will be interesting to see. Is Khalil Shakir, who I think will be the number one receiver, should be the number one receiver. I think I like Khalil a lot. I think he's a great player. But is he going to be a slot receiver, or is he going to be like that number one receiver? I don't know. I've seen him play a little bit of both, but I'm definitely leaning more towards the slot position for him. But of course, we drafted the boy, Keon Coleman, after trading down from 25 to 29, then from 29 to 33, and then from 33 to 36 or whatever. Just a lot of movement to the point where they didn't even draft somebody in the first round. And everybody was hoping, they had just drafted, they just traded away Stephon Diggs. Everybody was hoping, please, draft Xavier Worthy, who just came off a great debut. In the speed, holy shit. Or, draft A.D. Mitchell, or draft Brian Thomas, draft somebody, just maybe do you want to go up and get Malik Neighbors or somebody like that? Do you want to trade that was the expectation going in. And they ended up taking Keon Coleman, like I said, kind of early second round. And I'm excited. I haven't seen enough to sway me one way or another. And he is a second-round pick, so I don't have a ton of expectation for him to, for example, go for 1,000 yards or have an impact similar to a Justin Jefferson or, Jamar Chase, their rookie year, Puka Nacua, so on and so forth. It's possible, but I don't expect it. I expect him to straddle the lines of between 600 to 900 receiving yards, which if you look at the Bills, they had a handful of players statistically have a similar season where, Gabe Davis went for 750, Kincaid went for 700, Shakir went for 650. I can't expect him to have a significant rookie season. I don't think he's going to be Pro Bowl or anything like that, and I didn't really jive with him going so early. In a lot of fantasy drafts, and a lot of people were arguing that he's the Bills' number one receiver. I don't really think that's true. I don't think he's going to get all the targets. And the Bills have a tight end and potentially two tight ends that are going to get more targets than him. And potentially you might see Joe Brady carry over from last season, which they had a lot of success. At the end of the day, yes, statistics are nice, but you want to win games. The Bills just might not be as pass happy now that, again, they don't have Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis as their top two, and there's maybe a little bit of apprehension or a little bit of unknown from their pass catchers and their the confidence and just the trust that is totally a fucking thing. There will be some drops this year. There's going to be some tough drops this year. Whether that's Josh throwing it hard as hell or maybe not giving the best ball placement, or just the players not being in sync. It's going to happen, and I'm bracing myself for that. But, you also got Ray Davis as a pass catcher as well, backup running back, who should be of decent production. He's slated to get the backup job. A lot of fans really, really wanted Frank Gore Jr., but it sounds like it's going to be, James Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson, which, I'm cool with that. I'm fine with that. I think the Bills have a very good roster. I think a lot of people, they just They do the ooh, they do the ah. They lose to the Chiefs every year, and that already kind of, I think, knocks them down a peg in terms of like perception, right? As like a great team, because they haven't been to the Super Bowl. They've only been to one AFC title game, so on and so forth. But in the regular season, and honestly, during the playoffs, aside from the Chiefs, and I think the Bengals just catching them off guard and just at a bad time, the Bills are an elite team. They are a top 4 team in the NFL, I think. Because if you're going to argue me Eagles, if you're going to argue me Cowboys, if you're going to argue me Ravens, you might be onto something. But like, there's a lot of teams across the league that I'm like, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll take the Niners over them, and I don't know if I'll take the Chiefs, to be honest. I think that's kind of a tough. I think this year's Chiefs team, yes. But like last year's Chiefs team, no. Give me the Bills. The Bills were so much better than the Chiefs last year. But again, it's the great thing about the NFL. It comes down to one game, and you could be the greatest team in NFL history for 18 games in a row, and then you could stumble in the biggest game that matters against a team that lost 7 games in the regular season. Shout out to the 2007 Giants. But yeah, Bills, they had a fair amount of, movement, I guess, on their roster. But I still expect them to be, again, I think they may have a season, honestly, similar to the Chiefs last year, where there's a couple bonehead mistakes, and they never really get worked, although the Chiefs did have a few games there where they kind of got worked. And I'll get into the schedule here. But I think the Bills are still going to be a great team, and people predicting them to miss the playoffs, I don't see it, I'm a little bit biased, of course, but even still, like, I could see them maybe not winning the division, but not making the playoffs, that just seems ridiculous. Like, that just seems like you're going off on a limb, which I totally get that. It's kind of what you have to do, right? And I think it's kind of fun to do it that way, like, oh my gosh, the Titans, they invested so much in Will Levis, and I think they'll have a little bit more success with their coach and their infrastructure, and it'll take some time, and Will Levis is going to get better, I think, but God, think about all the stuff that they did for him in the offseason. He's got a nice little repertoire there to throw the ball to. With Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, I'm getting way off topic. But like, for that reason, that would be reason for me to like want to buy in. And maybe, if the Titans make the playoffs, probably not as a division winner, that's a wild card spot that gets taken up. And, I think there's a legitimate argument that the Dolphins or the Jets could win the AFC East, but I think there is just as strong, if not just stronger, by virtue of they've done it every time the past 5 years. Bills are going to win. You know what I mean? Like, it came down to the wire last year, but they still won for the 4th straight season, right? Anyway. Bills do start the season off against the Cardinals. As far as their schedule goes, and I'll try and break it down into 4 parts again and see, it's not very creative, but I think just kind of going in, I really haven't looked at the games, if I'm being frank with you. So this will give me kind of a good idea to kind of see how the schedule shapes up, because I couldn't tell you like, oh my gosh, this part of their schedule or the front or the back half is much easier than the front. I haven't really looked enough into it. Like, I know the divisions they play offhand, but either way, I think should be a really fun game to kick the season off, a home opener against an Arizona Cardinals team that, man, I was looking at their roster just for, like, honestly, fantasy purposes and just to prep for week 1 of the NFL season. And good God, they've got Kyler Murray, they've got Marvin Harrison Jr., Budda Baker. That's about it, We'll see what happens with the tight end. And I'm forgetting his name, but he showed some flashes last year. Trey something, and I'm blanking on his name. But man, I feel like that feels like a team that, yes, may make the playoffs this year, maybe pretty good. But that also feels like a team that's going to catch fire late and might have a slow start to the season. I could really see this game being a high-scoring affair, where maybe the Cardinals bring it within a score late in kind of a backdoor recovery type way. Or I could also see the Bills kind of taking care of business and, a score of like, I don't know, 27-13 or 27-17 or something like that. Like a pretty... I'd say there's a very high chance that the Bills are going to win this game. Like, I feel pretty good about this. Now, I think the line's at like 6.5. That's one that I'm like, I don't know, because I think Kyler is definitely capable, and I feel like he got enough time. And again, Marvin Harrison is pretty much all he's got. Like, Zay Jones is number 2, and he's suspended. And I like their rookie running back. And again, I think with time they will be better, but at this point in the season, and I think a lot of people are going to view it this way anyway, I feel like this is probably the weakest the Cardinals are going to be. So I like the Bills to take care of business against the Cardinals. And then short week, excited about this. Love as much Bills football as I can. It'll literally be just Tuesday and Wednesday of nights without football. Like literally this weekend has been great. Like it's Friday night now, Friday afternoon. But there's Thursday night football last night to kick off the season. It was a pretty good game, too. A little messy, penalties. That was kind of annoying, but overall, it's a pretty solid game, right? And there's a game tonight in Brazil, the Green Goblin game is what I'm going to call it, between the Packers and the Eagles. Spoiler, I think the Eagles are going to take it, but I think it's going to be another good game. But obviously college football, which, I'll be watching college football this year, so I'm excited for that. And then obviously NFL Sunday kicking off is going to be awesome. Monday night, great, scene of the crime potentially, right? I mean, you got the Jets and the 49ers, and I think it's hilarious that Leonard Floyd is going to be playing against Aaron Rodgers again on week 1 on Monday Night Football. And, man, the prop bet of all time would be that he sacks Aaron Rodgers on his first drive, but knocking on wood for his Achilles. But, yeah, so Dolphins, they're a pretty good team. Obviously they have a lot of talent, and they've kind of folded a little bit towards the back ends of the seasons the last few years, especially last year really helped the Bills out, I think, in securing that division crown in spite of the 6 losses the Bills had by like week 12. Even when they were sitting at 6-6, shout out to the rolling parlay that I made, and I really thought they were going to go to the Super Bowl. So it kind of died, but I still netted a lot. I started with $25 the week they played the Chiefs after losing to the Eagles, because I was like, this team's they're going to win out, and just stacked it win after win after win after win. I mean, they were 6-6 and finished 11-6, and they won their first game in the playoffs, and then they lost to the second. And it's the Chiefs, and we don't want to get into it. But this game, honestly, though, it's pretty tough, right? Just because, again, it definitely feels like if there was a time where Tua finally breaks on through, and he's had a couple games in the past. I think there was the one in Miami where it was really hot, like 2 years ago. And just in general, like, obviously, I don't think Tua is that great. I prefer just bigger, more polished physically, and he's a lefty, which is kind of weird, and like, he has such good weapons like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and things like that. That this could be a game where Tua has a great statistical game, straight up, or he could struggle, like he seems to do almost every time he plays the Bills. And then so you get Thursday Night Football, and then you get is this a game on Friday? September 23rd. When the hell is this game? I think. Yeah, okay, so you get Monday Night Football. Okay, whoops. I'm just, wow. So yeah, you go from Thursday Night Football, then, okay, I didn't even see the dates, I wasn't paying attention. You get basically a mini bye, which is kind of nice. After the Dolphins game, you go Monday Night Football the following week, home to Jacksonville. Jacksonville, again, kind of a weird team. I really don't know what to expect from them. I think they'll be decent. I mean, last year they were 9-8, right? So pretty good. They started at 8-3 and really fell apart the second half of the season. Last year, or the year before that, I should say, they started out like 5-8, and then they ended up winning their last 4 games, finishing 9-8. So they've had literally 2 foiling seasons the last 2 years, which is kind of interesting. I like Trevor Lawrence. Gabe Davis revenge game. This could be a bit of a toss-up. This could be a tough game. And following that, you go Thursday night, Dolphins. Monday night, home. Nice little break. And then you get Monday Night Football again, or Sunday Night Football, I should say, sorry, against Baltimore in Week 4. Baltimore last night, they didn't look great. Their offense, I will say, looked very... we'll see what Derrick Henry becomes, at certain points. I think with him, it's just one run, one, maybe 2 runs a game that bust open. And he looked kind of like his normal, like, chugging along self last night, but he didn't look great. The Ravens didn't look great. They looked like, ugh. I mean, Isaiah Likely obviously was great, but it looked like a lot of their offense was going through Lamar, and Lamar played pretty well last night. It was a great game. But, like, Zay Flowers got, like, 12 or 13 targets in touches combined. Like, it was crazy. He was, like, their main option. I know Bateman had a nice catch in there, too. But the Ravens, obviously, they're a great team in prime time. It's going to be tough. This 3-game stretch, you could make the argument for 3 losses. Again, kind of playing it safe, but just also being realistic here. Again, at this point, the Bills, with the team that they are, they have a track record. They have, some consistency to back up. They can beat anybody, you know what I mean? And they can also lose to anybody. See freaking losing to, like, Russell Wilson and Zach Wilson last year. Like, what the fuck? We lost to the Wilson brothers. Like, Jesus Christ. And then you beat the Chiefs. And then, you destroy the Cowboys. Like, anyway. I think the Bills will start 2-2 through this first 4-game stretch. Who they beat. If I had to pick, I think for whatever reason they have problems with the Jags. I just don't know why. So I think that the Bills in this 4-game stretch, I think they beat the Cardinals and the Dolphins, and they lose to the Jags and the Ravens. But again, I think it's the NFL any given Sunday, so they could lose to any combination of these 2 games. But I think it'll probably be 2 games. So I think they'll start 2-2, and then they get some 1 o'clock action against the Texans in Houston. Houston, the jury's out on them, obviously. They kind of got manhandled in the playoffs and just had I don't want to say a bad matchup with the Browns, because the Browns kind of shit the bed, but I don't know if I buy into C.J. Stroud being like a top 8 quarterback already and all of this hype around them. This is going to be game 5 for them, so it'll be still pretty early on in the season, but I feel like you might have an idea of how similar or how well CJ will be playing this year relative to how he played last year, which was he was very good last year. If he plays that same way, the Texans should probably win 12 games and should win the AFC South, definitely, as no question. It's going to be a tough game, man. Stephon Diggs' revenge game. But also, I don't know, the Texans are, they were picking 2nd overall like 2 years ago. They're a pretty young team. They lost to the Panthers last year. They can be had, right? And then you follow that up with a Monday night rematch against the Jets. So the Jets are playing a lot of Monday night games. But yes, this will be the rematch of the game where his Achilles just could not take it. And the Jets, I did not foresee the Achilles injury last year. No one did. Still couldn't believe that. We've seen it all, folks. Just anytime you think something's crazy is happening in one thing or another, whether it's a TV show or a movie or a song or a video game or, a sports broadcast, like a season in NFL, the NFL, a professional sports league. Bro, Aaron Rodgers literally is the most controversial fucking figure in the world, in the NFL. And just there's so much hype around him on and off the field. And then he gets freaking Achilles broken in the biggest spotlight, the first drive of the game. You just can't make it up. It's just, God, it's nuts. But the Jets are a tough team, bro. They are a tough team. And if he's healthy and if he's playing even to his 2022 form, which was not horrible, but nowhere near his MVP years. And again, personnel changes, valid. But the Jets could be scary, and we'll see what happens. I think there's going to be some tiebreakers here and there when it comes to the division. But, yeah, I mean, I would lean Bills, obviously, but it's going to be a tough game. But thankfully, after the Monday night game, get to go to Tennessee, or actually got to come home to play Tennessee. Titans team, which I think might be sneaky good. I would love to see where the Titans are at this point in the season, and what will be Game 7. If they're sitting at 3-4, they may be sitting at 3-3. They may be sitting at 2-4, or they may be sitting at 4-2, the surprise of the league. I don't know their schedule offhand, but again, I think they're a scrappy team, and I do think that they buy into Will Levis, and I think quarterbacks usually take off, or they usually take their biggest progression. There's the biggest progressional leap from year 1 to year 2. Like that year 2 is usually when people spaz out. We'll see, but the Bills, I think, should take care of business against the Titans, and then they travel all the way to Seattle in a game that I really want to go to, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to go, and it's September, and I've been thinking about going since the schedule came out, and I haven't finalized any plans to go to Seattle to see this game, where the Bills will travel to play the Seahawks at 4:05 or 1 o'clock Pacific time. But, I mean, the fact that the game's in about, I guess this has been like 6 weeks, and I still haven't made the plan to go. I don't know, it makes me wonder, but either way, I really want to go to this game. But the Seahawks, they're a decent team. I think they're the epitome of a decent team. I think they have the lowest floor, lowest ceiling in the NFL. I think that they're just like a straight arrow. Like I don't know. I mean, because there's no way they're beseating the Niners, and for that matter, I don't even think they beseat the Rams. Even though I think they've had some success against them in the past. Maybe the Cardinals, but like 9-8 seems to be the trajectory they're on. Even though they have a new coach, and it's a new era, and they have riches upon riches for pass catchers for Geno Smith, which is cool. Smith Njigba, he had some flashes. He broke my heart against the Eagles last year in a game when he got a game-winning touchdown. The Eagles were horrible last year at the end of the season. Oh, my God. So bad. But the Seahawks should be a decent team. But, again, I think the Bills are definitely better than the Seahawks. You know what I'm saying? Another 4-game stretch where, you got two teams that are, I would say, significantly lesser than the other two teams in this 4-game set. I think the Texans and Jets, they're just on better tiers than the Titans and the Seahawks. With that said, I know I said 2-2 before. Do I think the Bills are going to be sitting at 4-4? I don't. This might be a little ballsy of me, but I think through 8 games, the Bills, I think they're going to go through this stretch and they're going to win 3 of these 4 games. And I think the Bills will be sitting at 5-3 and feeling pretty good. They do have a late bye, but still through the first 8 games. Obviously, it all depends. Maybe they'll win the first 3 of those 4, and then they have a brutal loss to the Seahawks. Knock on wood for injuries, of course. But they just get dismantled or something, or they just have jet lag, and it, obviously things like that can happen. But I'm saying through the first 8 games, 5-3. And I feel pretty good about that. And speaking of feeling good, it's always nice to get to go home to play the Dolphins. It's the first week in November, right? So, weather shouldn't really be much of a factor, but it could be just one of those days in Buffalo in early November, where it is in the 40s or it's in the 30s, and the Bills don't have any fucking problem playing with that. Hello, perfect game. It was, below zero, sub-zero temperatures, and they scored 7 straight touchdowns in the playoffs against the Patriots. 2021, like, this team can do that. It's not a worry. It's only an issue for the Dolphins. And, if I think there's a chance the Bills get bested by the Dolphins early on in the season, I feel like they enact a revenge here. So I really feel good about the Bills in this matchup. And then a game that I'm for sure going to, which I'm really excited for. Been to Lucas Oil before many times. I've seen them play the Bills, and it was 2018. Andrew Luck and company dismantled the Josh Allen-less Bills, led by Derek Anderson, I believe, 38-5. The Bills hosted the Colts after this affair with the Dolphins on November 10th. And, you know, the Colts, I think at this point we will know if Richardson is durable enough, because this is, again, kind of towards the back end. I mean, this is game 10, so you're towards the back half of the schedule. But man, with Shane Steichen and that offense with Jonathan Taylor, if he can get humming, man, they could be really good. Like, the Colts could be a sleeper-ass team, you know? They really could go out there and just be a scary team, and this could be, you know, I've had horrible luck with live games in which the Bills just get outclassed and get their ass kicked, and I've only seen them win one game, and I've been to like 10 different Bills games across many different stadiums, and I've only seen them win once. But I feel better about the Bills beating the Dolphins than I do the Colts. And I think that the Dolphins are definitely better than the Colts. I would say. I think they're better than the Colts. But, oh, man, you can decide when it starts. But the Bills are going through murderer's row, if you will, this part of the season. Because after that Colts game, they do go back home to play the Chiefs, which I feel like, you know, every Bills fan feels like every single game is in Kansas City. And the last few games have been in Buffalo. The last two games, right? This last playoff game was in Buffalo. The game before that, when they had the Kadarius Toney offsides thing, that was in Kansas City. But it's nice to have it in Buffalo. But this Chiefs team, man, oof. Again, at this point in the season, these are going to be big games too, because I mean, you will have, you know, the teams that you don't know, like the Titans or, you know, the Jaguars potentially, or just like a lot of these teams that might be kind of scrappy and might be fighting for the playoffs. Like, maybe they're fighting, but they're just in the hunt and they just never stay out of that graphic, or they stay in that graphic. They never actually get into the playoff contention, like really. But like these next few games, bro, holy shit. I mean, there's a lot of cross-conference games. But, like, this next stretch of 4 games, I'm still keeping it to the 4, but, like, the next 4 after this stretch of 4, it's got some duds in there, but it's got some tough ones. But, the Chiefs, man, they look really good. They look like they're going to be a force in the regular season, of course, because this last year, they were bad. It was by far the worst team the Chiefs have ever had under Patrick Mahomes, and they still won the fucking Super Bowl. Go figure. Anything can happen. That's just crazy. But either way, the Bills, they have a good track record in the regular season against the Chiefs, and we know for sure it's going to be a great game. So looking forward to that. Then the Bills get their bye week. And then they go, after playing the Super Bowl champion, reigning back-to-back Super Bowl champion, the team that ended your season, the team that you've played many times, and you're probably not as fazed about playing them as you may think. The lights may not be too bright, although you are a different team, again, with all the players, all of the just veterans that the Bills lost. Ugh! You know, at this point in the season, are they still dropping passes? Are they still Kadarius Toneying? Have they gotten all of that out of their system? Which, again, I mean, I think a lot of that, if it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen earlier on in the year. So could be better to predict that the Bills will start slower. And despite this brutal stretch, because after, like I said, after playing the Super Bowl champions, they go home on Sunday Night Football to play the Niners. You know, so you play the runner-up, and then you play the champion who beat the runner-up in overtime. You get to play that team. They get to play them both at home, so that's nice. And the Niners are, I mean, there's not much else that can be said other than the fact that they're definitely the best team in the NFL from top to bottom. Again, I mean, the Chiefs look good this year, and they won the Super Bowl, and they won the Super Bowl the last 2 years. They have got a special quarterback who is going to kind of cancel out some of the deficiencies that they so had last year. And shame on the NFL, for the AFC as a whole, for just not giving it a good shot. Because, I mean, the Bills, yeah, they kind of did their thing. They pissed down their leg. They should have won that game. But, like, the Dolphins looked like shit. The Ravens look like shit. Like, shame on the conference, bro. Shame on the conference. At least the Niners had the lead in this overtime, right? But yeah, they're a juggernaut, NFC juggernaut, no question. If you make an argument that the Bills can be favored since they're playing at home this week, right? They could be favored in every matchup that they play. This would be the weakest argument. This is a tough 4-game stretch as a part of a really, really tough 8-game stretch, frankly. But I think the Bills. They're sitting at 5-3. I think they go 2-2 here, and they'll be sitting at 7-5 as they look down the last portion of their schedule, which again has got some toughies in here, because you are home to the You're home to the Niners on Sunday Night Football, but then you have to go to LA. You got to go to SoFi, which, how tough of an environment is that? That's valid, but you still got to travel across the country. It's not a night game, but still you do get to play the Rams, who I think, if Stafford's healthy, this would be a tough game. If he's not healthy, I think the Bills take care of business. Just being honest, I think that's a team that rides with that. They need a good quarterback for that engine to run. Because you saw how it was last year without him, and it was horrible. They were so fucking bad. But that's a tough game. And then, if not worse, not only think about this, right? So the Bills get to play the Super Bowl teams from last year back to back. And then after that, they get to play the Rams, and then they get to go to Detroit to play the Lions, who, obviously have had a lot of success. They're obviously a really good team. And, Matt Stafford, we're playing the Matt Stafford Bowl, and we're playing the Super Bowl. Like, the Bills play the Super Bowl rematch of the teams that were in the Super Bowl last year, and then they play the Matt Stafford Bowl. They play the Rams, then they play the Lions. Lions, I think they're probably the second best team in the NFL from top to bottom. Obviously, I'm not a huge fan of Jared Goff, and really in a game like this, I feel like the Bills have an upper hand. I feel better about the Bills. I feel better about the Bills winning this game against the Lions in Detroit. I feel better about them winning this than if they have to play Stafford and the Rams in LA. I still think the Bills can beat both of these teams. Just because, again, I think the Lions, obviously you can make the argument that, they beat the Chiefs last year and they beat the Packers last year and so on and so forth, like in terms of like Jared Goff coming up small in big moments, and just the Lions in general not maybe being built to beat up on really like elite teams. You can make the argument against that, but I'm going to make the argument for it. So I actually feel pretty good about the Bills, especially towards the end of the year. This could be another situation where I think towards the back end of last year, the Lions kind of pissed the opportunity to be the 1 seed down their leg, and just in general had kind of a messy end to the season. And maybe we'll see that again. But they're also a really, really great team. So after the Lions, we get to come home to play the Patriots for the first time in Week 16. The Bills are playing the Patriots for the first time, so they play them twice in the last 3 games. Spoiler. Patriots are horrible. Maybe they'll be playing spoiler. I don't know. They're one of, if not the most talent-devoid teams in the league. And whereas maybe sometimes those types of teams that when they happen, obviously somebody has to be the worst team in the league. Maybe they have some scares early on in the year where they might win a game or they might just be a little bit more competitive. But as the season wears on, and again, you can make a counter argument, and I wouldn't fault you, although I feel like this argument's a little bit stronger than that. I think May will probably be starting at this point, I would hope. And the Bills absolutely rip any and all, with the exception of like Mac Jones, like one time last year randomly. Post Tom Brady, the Patriots quarterbacks, especially their rookies, have been absolutely dismantled. And I feel the same thing is going to happen. So I think the Bills are gonna take care of business handily in both Patriots games. The finale, which depending on playoff implications may not mean much, and also this Week 16 game. But sandwiched into this Patriots sandwich, it's more of an AFC East combo meal, because you've got your buns, which literally the Patriots are. I'm making something here. The Bills' last 3 games in their schedule, they have an AFC East combo meal. And that combo meal consists of the buns of the burger, the buns of the burger of the AFC East and the Patriots, because they're buns, they're trash, they're not good. And in between that, they've got the Jets, who, they're going to be a tough out if Rodgers is healthy, if they have an offensive pulse. They're going to be a good team. And so, are the Jets the fries or are they the burger? I don't know, because if they're sandwiched in between buns, you need to have something there. So for complete the sandwich pun, then the burger, the meat, the goodies, if you will, I would say that's pretty valid. That's a nice way to describe the Jets, especially in comparison to the Patriots. The Patriots are the buns. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I like the bun. I like carbs. I'm American. We'll go with they've got the AFC East burger at the end of the season. This last 5-game stretch, again, I mean, Rams, Lions, Jets, 3 quality-ass teams. I don't think anybody will argue you on that unless, again, Rodgers isn't playing or the Jets don't have a quarterback, which it's happened the last few years, so I can't roll it out completely, but I'm going to assume that it's not going to happen because I hope it doesn't. I want to see Garrett Wilson. I want to see Breece Hall. I want to see Aaron Rodgers. I want to see good football, bro. I want to see it. So the Bills are sitting at 7-5. I think that the Bills are going to go in this last 5-game stretch. Man, part of me feels like the Bills are going to go like 3-2, because again, there's 3 divisional matchups in there, and then the other 2 teams that aren't in your division are good ass teams that you have to play on the road. Wow, I didn't think the Bills were only going to be. I didn't think I was going to project 10 wins for the Bills, but yeah, I'm going to say the Bills go 3-2 in this last 5-game stretch to round out the season in quarters as 10-7. That's pretty. I'm kind of surprised, but I feel good about that. I was spot on last year. I said 11-6. They ultimately were 11-6. How they got to 11-6, not what I was expecting, but it is what it is. Josh Allen is that dude. The team as a whole, being led by him, should always have a chance, which is awesome. I love that. That was my dream, watching the Bills for so long prior to Josh Allen entering the picture. Dreaming of that franchise quarterback. Something the Bears have been doing for literally like 80 years, and I think they might have gotten their guy in Caleb Williams. Hopefully. We'll see. But the year before last year, they had the Damar Hamlin game, but I believe I predicted them to go 12-5 maybe. And they went like 13-3, right? So I have a pretty good eye for this team. I love this team. I watch this team's games every minute. I try not to miss any snaps if I can. And I spend hours recording myself, sharing my thoughts, how I feel about them at certain points in the season. I'm a fan for sure. But yeah, I think the Bills go 10-7. I think that's a safe bet. I think their over-under is 10.5 for wins. So, which I don't know if I actually touched that, which I don't think I would. But, with that record, there's 7 playoff teams, so I think they'll get in. I would say the Bills have like an 80%, 90% chance to win enough games to make the playoffs with 7 teams. You know what I mean? But 10-7, I don't know if that's going to be good enough to win the division. But again, I mean, if the division is on the line, or the division is winnable with like the last 2 games of the season, like if it's between the Jets and the Bills for the AFC East, give me fucking Josh Allen over Aaron Rodgers any day of the fucking week, let alone Rodgers at this state. And obviously the Patriots are the Patriots. Maybe they're going to play spoiler, but again, I mean, there's no more Belichick, man. I feel like it's a new dawn in New England, and they may just be pushovers. I mean, they have nothing. Like, their team is fucking gutted. But maybe they're rookies. Maybe Jalen Polk is like going to be hitting 1,000 yards at this point in the season. I don't know. That's the great thing about the NFL, right? You just never know. But again, if I could go 10.5 wins, I would, because just 10 wins, just, oh man, that does not seem very comforting. But I mean, the Bills are a team where if they get in the playoffs, it doesn't really matter if they're at home, clearly, because the last 2 years they've lost at home. So fuck, I mean, yeah, it's nice for Buffalo. You know, I'm not local, so I don't have as much of a dog in that fight. But I mean, it's nice to have a home, you know, game, but I don't know how much it matters. If anything, I think it could be even more pressure, because your favorite, usually the home team in the playoffs, right, is favored to win. But they're a team that if they are somehow the 7th seed at 10-7, that 2 seed is going to be in fucking trouble, and that 2 seed is probably going to lose. So yeah, I'm not worried about them missing the playoffs. I'm not worried. I'm really just, man, if they get in as the 7th seed or the 6th seed, just let me wait. Like, can we please play Mahomes in the championship game? I don't want to. I hate playing him in the divisional round, because then it just makes me mad, because I see other jokers in the playoffs, maybe in the championship round, that lose or just are there, and I'm like, bro, really? Like, the Bills are a better team than the Ravens, I thought, and I think it bore out. The Bills are a better team. Obviously, different conference, but like, well, maybe not. The Lions were pretty good last year. I think the Lions and the Niners were legitimately the 2 best teams in that conference last year. And the Ravens and the Chiefs maybe were, but the Chiefs weren't very good last year. Anyway, yeah, I think Bills go 10-7. As far as kind of how I think it's going to go, I really have no idea. If I had to pick, you know, like their biggest standout player, because I am excited to see what they end up getting out of like the rookies, Cole Bishop and Ray Davis, and Keon Coleman, of course. One really excited. I mean, even Dwayne Carter, you know, the D tackle, right? But at the same time, I'm also aware that these guys were drafted in like the 2nd, 3rd round, and I don't know if I'm really trying to be projecting some big praise to somebody who may only start half the games just because they aren't able to, as just a result of the depth of the Bills, to contribute, you know, significantly. And it's not necessarily a fault of their own, you know. But I'm excited. You know, I think Keon Coleman will again be in that like 600, 700, 800 receiving yard range. He might have a lot of touchdowns. I'm really excited to see how Dalton Kincaid performs. I think he's got the chance. A lot of mouths to feed on that Bills offense, but he's got the chance to really be productive, and be like a top tier tight end. You know, from a fantasy perspective, but just in general. And I think he's definitely capable. Obviously, they drafted him in the 1st round. You know, he's fighting with Knox, which I think is great. I think it's the thing people overlook when they think about the Bills and, oh my gosh, their offense is going to suck, or this team is just not going to be very good because they lost Diggs, they lost Gabe Davis, they lost this, they lost that. Defense, I think, is going to be the biggest question mark, right, with like Von Miller and stuff like that, because he was terrible last year. You know, he was just coming off an injury. He's old, and he literally just didn't do anything. Like, he was, it was unfortunate. And that's just how the cookie crumbles, you know. I think that's completely as a result of his injury, and just being off the field for as long as he was. But I'm getting off topic here. No, I think the Bills, if I had to pick a leading receiver, wide receiver, I'm going to say Khalil Shakir. I think Shakir could have around 1,000 yards, and I really hope so, because he deserves it. I've been high on him ever since they drafted him, and he really showed out the back end of last year. And it really kind of gave, I think, a lot of people, maybe some, definitely Bills fans, but definitely gave also some other people some ideas of like, this guy could be like the next Hunter Renfrow or something. But hopefully, you know, his hairline looks better. Oh, thank God. Not very difficult to have a better hairline than Hunter Renfrow, but hopefully he sticks around and is actually productive for longer than Hunter Renfrow was for like maybe 2 years. But I think a lot of that is because of Josh McDaniels and playing with the Raiders, and now that I think about it, there's a reason why he was probably balding as fast as he was. Anyway, but leading pass catcher could very well be Dalton Kincaid, and I would bet my money, it's kind of a hot take, It's not maybe the safest, but I think I would bet that he would be the most productive. I think James Cook's going to be, he had 1,000 yards and just a solid season last year. I think it's more or less going to be the same. I don't know how much. I'm not expecting too much production from Ray Davis, but if we do see some production from him, some touches from him, obviously I'm going to be looking at that yards per carry. Hopefully, if he does get 100 touches on the ground, hopefully he's getting at least 4 yards a carry. We'll see. If he can fill in for Latavius Murray last year, then we'll be chilling. And we'll be rocking and rolling. So I'm looking forward to that. I think Josh Allen's going to have another great season. I think if there's a year for him to win the MVP, just purely based on the fact that it's pretty much all up to him. Again, a lot of people like to give credit to, Josh Allen just so happened to become a really, really good player when Stephon Diggs came in the picture. Is it all because of Josh Allen, or is it all because of Stephon Diggs? Like, how much, I think the fact that he won't have that number one receiver, when people think of the Bills' offense, they won't have that crutch of, maybe it's a lot of people who don't want to admit that they were wrong about him and want to accept the fact that he is really, really good, and they want to try and minimize him or take away as much credit from him as they can, and highlight his circumstantial and just overall, if you actually paid attention to the turnovers, when they happened, how they happened, you'd understand that, like, all right, it's kind of overblown, But again, it is what it is. There's a lot of sports betting. There's a lot of people who want to take the game seriously but don't want to take the time to actually take the game serious, so you get narratives that are easy to follow, and it is what it is. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. I think he's going to have a great season. I think he's a top pick for MVP. The Bills win 10 games. I don't know if a quarterback, he would have to have a really special season, which I think he's very capable of. And if he cut down on the turnovers, which a lot of them, again, were circumstantial and just kind of tough, like, damn, Josh, or they're, arm punts, or they're tactically placed, or it's fourth down, and you save field position by getting an interception as opposed to just an incomplete pass. Shit like that legitimately matters. He would have won the MVP because Lamar is not a very good MVP last year. But yeah, defensively, it's nice to have Rasul Douglas. It's nice to have, Benford and Elam, who I think are gonna get better. I do think that those guys are gonna develop. And I think that the Bills, again, while they're gonna be missing their big three back there of Hyde, Poyer, and White, I think that they'll fill in just fine. And we'll learn that the Bills, they're going to have some tests. It's going to be tough going up against Christian McCaffrey and Debo and all those elite players after or before going up against Cooper Kupp and Puka and freaking Jahmyr Gibbs, and just like, it's a gauntlet that they have to go through. And it's, if the Bills end up statistically towards the top, then they deserve it, because, wow, you could make some arguments last few seasons that they played some bad teams to inflate their numbers, but this year, holy shitballs, they're playing pretty much all the best offenses, which I think is going to be great. It's going to battle test you, because, again, this team, it's all about the playoffs, for better or for worse, from a sanity standpoint. But obviously, Von Miller would love to see him, get a little bit more production. Maybe, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 sacks, or at least just be there on those passing downs. Because Bro didn't register a single sack last year, which that's sad. That is legitimately like, damn, Von Miller is a generational player. The Bills had decent production out of Leonard Floyd, who's no longer on the team, and more importantly, Ed Oliver. And Greg Rousseau, I think, was better than his only 5 sacks that he ended up having last year, which I can't really – that's kind of shocking that he only had that many. Terrell Bernard, the inside linebacker, who I think is going to be pretty good. He had a very nice statistical season last year, and I think he's only going to get better. He had 6.5 sacks, which is like, wow. But, we still got Teron Johnson back there. I like Taylor Rapp. I'm excited for Cole Bishop. I think he's going to be a really good player, and I think he's going to be a good starter. Again, I think there will be some development that we will see from players like Kyrie Elam, where maybe the sixth round pick finally is dethroned by his draft mate who was picked in the first round. Like, shout out Christian Benford, we love you. And you've been a great player. You are on the list of many, many, draft steals, if you will, that the Bills have found in the defensive backfield in recent memory, alongside with, guys like Levi Wallace and Taron Johnson. Hello. And you could even make the argument for Trey White, because he was end of first round. He was, he was elite cornerback. Injuries aside, that really kind of fucked him up. But he was elite cornerback for 5 years. Maybe not that anymore, but we still got Dane Jackson too. And unfortunately lost Milano, so that's gonna suck. Fucked up his bicep, so obviously he's coming back from an injury as is. So does he have the normal expected recovery time for this new bicep injury, which is normally half the season? I don't know. I think he should come back when he's ready, because the Bills have been without him for long enough that they can handle a little bit longer, and I want him to come in healthy, and he's a fucking linebacker, so he's going to be fucking throwing him. He's literally playing the most crazy position you could imagine for somebody who's been, I guess, injury prone the last year. So take your sweet time, Matt Milano. We love you. We miss you. But we also need you to come back healthy. But if I had to throw out some stat predictions defensively or just projections for production, again, I think Greg Rousseau is going to continue to be a very solid pass rusher. I think he's going to get a little bit more productive than 6.5 sacks, because that's, again, or 5 sacks, sorry. 6.5 was from Terrell Bernard. Another player who I hope to show some nice development alongside Dorian Williams and a few other players that are going to get some starting time in our linebacking core that is very needed, because the linebacking core, man, it's weak. It's weak. We don't have A.J. Klein anymore. All right, we're rocking with, we aren't even rocking with Tyrell Dodson anymore, I don't think, I believe they cut Deion Jones. It's going to be, that's definitely the weakest, not just part of the defense, but part of the team as a whole. I think everywhere else, the Bills are solid to above average to good to elite in terms of, the quarterback. But yeah, I think as a whole, give me Rousseau. Give me Rasul Douglas to find some picks. Give me Cole Bishop to just be a good player, man. I don't know if I'm going to go on a limb and say all rookie team, but we will know this time next year that Cole Bishop is a starter. He's going to win the starting job this year. And the Bills are going to go 10-7. Josh Allen's going to be fantastic, and we're going to hope and we're going to pray that we get the seeding right to where we're not facing the second seed Chiefs and the Patrick Mahomes, because God, I want a little bit more playoff football than that, because I don't feel good about that matchup. But you never know. It could be nice to see Patrick Mahomes eliminated in the wild card round. How that fucking crazy would that be? But we're going to hope and we're going to pray that 10-7 for my projection is good enough for us, A, to make the playoffs, B, feel good about it, C, potentially Josh win his first Super Bowl. That would be really, really, not Super Bowl. I mean, yeah, obviously, but first MVP. Because he deserves it, man. He deserves it. It's going to be interesting. I have no clue who's going to emerge from the Bills' offensive personnel as the top of the top. I think somebody will. Whether that's Kincaid, whether that's Shakir, whether it's freaking Keon Coleman, whether it's Curtis Samuel, I don't fucking know. But if I had to pick, I would say Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid are my top two. But man, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Keon Coleman can bring in year one, as well as maybe Matt Collins runs out there barefoot and just fucks around and wins us a couple game winners with touchdowns. I don't know, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the football season, man. I need it. I'm so glad football's back. Go Eagles tonight.